Hi people, good afternoon everybody. Hope you're doing well. You're maintaining the soaps. Please keep at home and stay safe. Today we are going to look at the Great Trek. We are going to look at the Great Trek in Southern Africa. What was the Great Trek? The Great Trek was the mass movement of the Boers from the Cape Colony to the interior of Southern Africa between the 1830s to the 1840s. They started from the areas of Graaf Reinet and Grahamstown, and they were led by several leaders, for example, Pretorius, Louis Trigard, Potgieter, Van Rensburg, and Maries. And as they were moving, they used ox wagons to carry their movable property. What caused this great trek, or what was known as the Afrikaner migration or the Boa Exodus? We note after the coming of the British at the Cape, it dominated the Boers. So the Boers' desire for independence from the British forced them to move from the Cape Colony to the interior. And the fact that there was availability of vacant land in the interior, especially after the Mofokeng period, many of the Boers were inspired to come and to move into the interior. Yet others simply moved because others were moving because of group influence. And we should also know that the Boers had love for adventure, to explore. So the desire to explore what was in the interior also made many of these Boers to move from the Cape Colony to the interior of Southern Africa. And by nature, the Boers were nomadic. They always believed in moving from one place to another, and this also contributed to the Great Trek. You should also realize that with the coming of the British at the Cape, the population increased at the Cape Colony, and the fact that many of the Boers were farmers who desired to get fertile lands, they decided to move away from the Cape and move into the interior. And we know that when the British came to the Cape, they came up with many reforms. They took over the administration at the Cape and they made everything British. So the Anglicization in the administration at the Cape, following British rules and laws, made many of the Boers to move into the interior. And we should also know that the British were interested in ending slavery, and slavery which was mainly practiced by the Boers. So the emancipation of the slaves by the British in the 1830s motivated many of the Boers to migrate from the Cape Colony because they really believed that the Africans were meant to work for them. And yet, among the many reforms the British introduced at the Cape was the use of English instead of the Dutch languages. So by undermining the Dutch language, the Boers decided to migrate from the Cape Colony and move into the interior. And we should also note that from the time the British settled at the Cape, there was that suspicion, enmity, and long-term hatred between the two European powers. And so that long-term hatred between the British and the Boers motivated the Boers to move away from the Cape Colony and move into the interior. And there were also rumors that the British were going to force the Boers to marry Africans and also serve in the army. Remember, the Boers always believed that they were more superior than the Africans. So going by those rumors, many of the Boers decided to move away from the Cape Colony and settle into the interior of Southern Africa. And to the Boers, the policies introduced by the British, which were liberal in their own eyes, which were not favoring the Boers, motivated them to migrate into the interior. And the fact that they had organized leaders like Pretorius, Pietrotieff, Trigard, Potgieter also motivated them. They mobilized them, they organized them in their movements. We should also note that many of the reforms introduced by the British at the Cape were the land reforms, where land had to be titled, mapped, fenced, which was not liked by the Boers. So they desired to go into the interior where they could easily grab African land without British interference. And seriously, going by the fact that they believed that their race was pure compared to the Africans, they decided to migrate away from the British who were controlling them to maintain their race. And we should also remember that during the Kafir Wars that were between the Xhosa and the Boers, the British forced the Boers to lose Queen Adelaide to the Xhosa. So the fact that they had lost that province, that anger motivated many of them to migrate away from British influence at the Cape Colony and move into the interior. And with the coming in of the missionaries who believed that Africans had to be protected from Boer mistreatment and enslavement, they started preaching equality of all races, which was against the DRC, the Dutch Reformed Church, the religion the Boers were following. The Boers decided to migrate away from the Cape Colony and move into the interior, into what was referred to as the Boa Exodus. And to the Boers, they wanted to preserve their traditions and cultures, which were being manipulated, which were being undermined by the British, who were emphasizing English ways of life. So that also motivated them to move into the interior. At the same time, the Boers resented reduction of the influence of the DRC. The DRC was the Dutch Reformed Church, the religion the Boers were supposed to follow. Unfortunately, when the British came in, the British missionaries started undermining the influence of the DRC, which was an insult to the Boers. And so they decided to migrate away from the Cape, move into the interior. And eventually, when we look at some of the reforms introduced by the British, were the Black Circuit Courts, where the Africans were allowed to report their Boer masters who were mistreating them. And since many of the Boers looked at the Africans as underdogs, they could not accept that. And so this forced many of them migrate away from the Cape Colony and move into the interior, where they would be free from British influence. In conclusion, therefore, the British reforms at the Cape Colony after the British taking over the administration at the Cape greatly contributed to the Great Trek. I'm going to leave you with an activity. Explain the factors that led to the Afrikaner migration. And for more on these and other topics, please visit the link below. Thank you and have a good time. We shall continue from there next time. Thank you. Have a good day.